Welcome back to part 2, so let's pick up where we left off. Types of communication. Now the first type of communication we need to think about is intrapersonal communication. This is communication that you have within yourself. So if you've heard the phrase, no, people shouldn't talk to themselves, or something to the effect of, if you talk to yourself then you're crazy, well guess what? Everyone talks to themselves to some degree. It could be something simple such as, oh man, I don't really want to do this today. Or, why do I always do that? Those are forms of intrapersonal communication. Think about it. Who are you talking to in those situations? Yourself. There's also interpersonal communication. And this communication involves communicating with somebody else, forming a relationship with that person. Now, this communication could be in the form of dyad, which means two people, or it can be in a small group situation. We'll talk more in depth about what interpersonal communication looks like in the future chapters. Public communication. In this form of communication, one person speaks in front of a large audience. This is typically what people think about when they think about speech communication, giving a speech. Now, this can exist in maybe a lecture hall. This can be a group, a very large group. It can be at political rallies. All of those are good forms of public communication. There's also mass communication. Mass communication is a form of communication that happens via radio, television, newspapers, magazines, books, or movies. There's some other channel that's used other than a direct channel to communicate a message. And there's communication via social media. Now this form of communication has grown tremendously. It's communication that we use through our cell phones, our text messaging, and different types of social media online, such as Facebook and Twitter. Now there's some things to think about as we distinguish social media from face-to-face communication. First off, interactivity. It's completely different how we interact on Facebook and other social networking tools compared to face-to-face. In some ways, people would rather interact on social media than face-to-face. While both face-to-face communication and social media have high interactivity, social media can have high interactivity over long distances or long periods of time. Then there's a temporal structure. Face-to-face communication is instantaneous. You're either going to hear or see what your friend is trying to communicate to you. Social media, on the other hand, doesn't have this type of temporal structure. Doesn't have this type of time setting. It may be where you get synchronous communication, where you simultaneously sender and receiver, such as face-to-face, maybe do a phone call or text messaging if they're right there. But it could also be asynchronous, where you may send a text and you have to wait hours before the person replies back. Or you post something to Facebook messaging, and eventually, the next day, your friend says something back. Then there's social cues. Social cues are those verbal or nonverbal features that we get to help us to distinguish what's really going on here. What's the real meaning? Face-to-face has very rich social cues. I'm fine versus I'm fine feels different because of the social cues, the verbal inflections that happen. But on social media, we don't have those social cues. You can't really tell if someone's I'm fine really means that they're good or that they're just saying the words. We don't have that tone to help us pick it out. Now, emoticons and emojis kind of help us, but still, they're still quite limited, not like face-to-face. Replicability. So when our communication occurs in an environment that makes it easy to record and redistribute, that refers to replicability. Face-to-face happens and you can't replicate it. You can try to, but it's limited. On social media, I can copy and paste what someone says and keep repeating it and redistributing it over and over again. And because it's also online forever, so to speak, I can always go back to the original message and figure out, well, what did they really say? Sometimes in face-to-face, you can't remember exactly what's said. Storage. This also kind of goes back to once it's online, it's always there. Face-to-face, you can say something, it's gone. But we all know that sometimes those ugly pictures that you did not want everyone to see on your Facebook page have now gone viral, and everyone has seen them. And there's no way you can ever take it down because it's on the internet. It's there forever. And the fact that it even went viral helps us understand the reach of social media. When I have a face-to-face communication, I'm limited to who's right there in that room, in that space. But when I put something on Twitter, it can go viral. It can reach thousands of people. It can reach hundreds of people. It may even reach millions of people. I will never know. Then there's mobility. In our face-to-face communication, we are quite mobile. I can drive over to my friend's house and have a face-to-face conversation. I can walk over to my neighbors and have a conversation. Sometimes with social media and other mediated forms, we're limited. Maybe it's through a computer. Maybe it's through our phone. So, for example, if there's no Wi-Fi, no internet access, we can't reply or we can't respond to someone's message. Now here comes the misconceptions about communication. So, think about your own communication. Have you encountered some of these myths before? First, communication is a cure-all. You may be wondering, well, of course, good communication fixes problems. That's wrong. Good communication hopefully fixes most problems, but it can't fix every single problem that there is. Sometimes you just have to agree to disagree. Quantity means quality. That's a myth. People often think, well, if I just keep communicating, then people are going to think that I'm very smart. That's not true. It's more important to have good quality than have a lot of words. Meaning is in the words. That's also not true. The words in and of themselves don't mean anything until you give it meaning. So, for example, your book gives, I don't feel well. I don't feel well can mean a lot of different things. It could mean that you feel a little queasy. It could mean that you need to go to the hospital. There's varying degrees of what I don't feel well means. But how you interpret it is going to affect the meaning. Therefore, the meaning's not in the words, it's in you. We all have the natural ability to communicate. Why is this a myth? Well, we can also talk and have nonverbals, but we don't come out of the womb ready to communicate to the most effective way that we can. We still have to learn how to communicate. We are taught how to talk. We pick up other people's nonverbal cues, and then we use them ourselves. I still frown very similar way to my dad. And then lastly, communication is reversible. Nope. No. Remember, once you say it, it's out there forever. You may be forgiven for something that you said that was inappropriate or mean, but guess what? You can't put the words back in your mouth and pretend like they never existed. So, in fact, communication is irreversible. So, which misconception surprised you? Were you thinking that all of these were true? So that concludes Chapter 1, Connecting Process and Principles. There's still a lot more to learn about communication, but I'm glad that you got your feet wet by walking through this first chapter to figure out, well, what is communication really?